but that we can read online. We'd like to know what we can't read online and meet the man behind the name and the face. Who is Wakabi Wairagala?
So, Wairagala Wakabi is me, and I'm glad that our time has been chopped off by a few minutes, because if it's a matter of speaking about who I am not in possession of too many words. What I could say though is that it is difficult for me to speak about myself here without doing a little bit of self-praise. And I'll say Wakabi is one of the most hardworking people I've ever met. He loves reading a lot, he loves writing a lot, and he likes really being focused on tasks and getting them attained. That's not only him, but also the individuals that he works with. He would like something similar, an attitude and an ethic similar to that.
Thank you. I know you said you are not a man of many words, but today we will get many words from you, and I'm sure there's a lot to learn. One of the things that I've come to learn is that those who do not speak a lot, let me use one of the words you use, those who are not loquacious are the people who typically have a lot more to say. Let's go on a journey, Wakabi, if you don't mind. Let's start this journey from the very beginning. I will rewind all the way to when you were born. Let's rewind a bit to when you started getting a sense of getting started as a digital rights expert. What was it that led to you either getting involved with what eventually became CIPESA, or getting involved with digital rights, or your foray into journalism and into e-governance and all of the things you studied up to your PhD level? How did this all get started?
So I'm still in pursuit of that title of expert, which you have used. I haven't yet gotten there, but inshallah, one day soon. There was a conference called Highway Africa, which Rhodes University used to organize. And that was the genesis of my involvement in digital rights. It used to be the convening of every individual that cared about, was aware of, wanted to learn about issues of new media, issues of internet governance. And this used to happen in South Africa every September. So I attended the first Highway Africa conference probably in '99. And from there, that's how I got serious interest in digital rights issues. As it happened, the director of the New Media Lab, who was also the organizer of Highway Africa, a fine gentleman called Roland Stanbridge, had been working in South Africa for many years. Then he went to Sweden during the apartheid years because of his activism. And then he had come back to Rhodes to start that program. After attending that program, I enrolled at Rhodes University for a master's degree in new media and communication. And that gentleman was actually my classmate also there. And I used to stay in his house, very lovely place on the beach in Port Alfred. The long and short of it is that when he went back to Sweden, where he was the head of a program, I also went and enrolled in that university where I did my other studies. But the long and short of it is that during the days of Highway Africa, those were the days when the World Summit on the Information Society processes were on. So Highway Africa had a couple of individuals who they thought were really enthusiastic, and they would organize occasionally to take us to what they were calling the PrepCons, preparatory meetings of the World Summit on the Information Society. to be able to understand the issues that were being discussed under WISIS. And so we would go to Geneva, where these meetings were taking place. But also something else which launched my interest as a spin-off from that, but also actually got me into CIPESA, is that at that time, there was a program called the Catalyzing Access to ICTs in Africa, CATIA, which was funded by DFID and did all sorts of things around Africa. That program needed somebody to go and spend 2 months in Geneva, basically understand how the IT works, how the WISE itself was going, how the WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, works, and how all these organizations are debating issues to do with ICT policy. So they sent me there. I did 2 months there, got a lot of money. I think it was $6,000, and I learned a lot. The moment I came back, the CATIA program had started 2 ICT policy centers, one in in Cape Town called CIPESA, one in Senegal called CIPACO. So a lady who was the head of CATIA, she's called Claire Sibthorpe. She's the head of GSMA Connected and GSMA Women. That lady offered me a job in CIPESA. I'm still here.
Interesting. I think this is not a story we hear all the time. So I'm glad to hear this. Quick question, by the way. If you didn't take that job to work as the, which is why you're AD of CIPESA right now, what else would you be doing? Singing, acting movies? What else would you be doing if you were not?
At that time, I was teaching at a local university here, the oldest university in this region. I would still be teaching because if I get a little bit more time from CIPESA, I am going to go back to teaching very soon. Away from that, I'm a very musical person, I claim. I used to play a bit of guitar, I play a bit of drums, and I can do a very bad dance routine to Congolese music. So that's something which I can do on the side in case I had the time. Without even being loquacious as I am, I think it's something I can get myself to do, just like I'm able to do what I'm doing right now.
Interesting. Who would have taken Wakabi for a potential musician? Anyway, today is the day we find out all of those things that we would like to know. Let me go a bit, back to the very beginning. Let's talk about challenges. And the reason I want to ask you about challenges is because you are on a journey. You are on a journey, like you said. You're still on that journey, right? And there are many people who are just starting out, in their career, either as digital rights enthusiasts, or that just work in this space, in our civil space generally. What were some of the challenges that you faced at the beginning that you look back now and you just smile? Oh my God! What were those challenges, and how were you able to overcome them? And as you share this, I would love for you to share as much details as possible, because there may just be people who are listening to us right now who are thinking, oh, that sounds like a similar challenge to what I'm having right now.
There are a few things which I think can help solve challenges than the pursuit of additional knowledge. Additional knowledge can be attained by going for formal education. It can also be attained by somebody having a keen interest in reading, in writing, in consulting colleagues and mentors, people who they think are able to give them advice on what they are doing. I think I did all three. When I went to Sweden, I did a second master's degree in informatics, and then I did a PhD. Throughout the period and up to now, as I said before, I read a lot. And I try to understand things that are new, even things that are abstract, even when they are extremely difficult, especially when they involve numbers and give me headache. I try again and again. The other thing is really consulting peers, listening to other individuals, even those we may assume may not know as much as we do. But the other one is having a mentor. There are many individuals that have been sort of mentors to me. Some of them are actually my contemporaries in terms of age, in terms of the jobs they do, but there are ways in which they handle life and knowledge and, social relationships, not personal, intimate relationships, but social relationships. But there's a lot to learn from. Others have been individuals who have been, for instance, my teachers. They have also been very, very useful people to always consult and learn from. Some of them, you can follow them quietly without them knowing that you are actually consistently learning from them. A few times you ask. So some of those things are not easy to do. You can want to have somebody to be your mentor, but they don't have the time for you. You can want to acquire education, but maybe you don't have access to financial resources for that. You do not have subscriptions to online resources, something like that. But also in the world in which many of us live, opportunities tend to be few, and opportunities are not always dished out on merit. So that can be a challenge to very many individuals that are trying to find a space and do good stuff in life, not just in the field of digital rights, but in basically every sphere of life.
Okay, thank you, Wakabi. Can I ask you what you're reading right now?
Besides the coffee?
Yes, you're drinking the coffee, but what book has your primary interest right now?
Now, I haven't read a book in the last couple of months, actually, probably from December. As much as I like reading, a lot of times it seems like a luxury when I'm to read a book that is not directly related to what work I am doing, because I often have a very little time to spare away from work. At that time, I cannot be dedicated to reading. To reading, I try and do some things which also contribute to my knowledge and my well-being. One of those things is called whiskey.
I think I know what that is. It's the senior brother of coffee. Okay, so let me come to, so you started with at CIPESA, and now you're literally responsible for building and sustainability of the organization. Let me ask you, if I were to ask, if I give you a contract right now, a writing contract to write a book about building and institution and making it sustainable. What are some of the things, what will be the chapters of that book? Building and sustainability. There are people who are starting out, there are people who have been working hard now or that you're still doing that you know absolutely contribute towards building institutions and making them sustainable.
I am a member of a board of some reputable organization. In the last 2 board meetings we had, the issue came up of how do you attain sustainability? How do you pursue financial resilience, etc. And I was totally blank. The fact is that CIPESA is a fairly resilient and sustainable organization, but I am not very, it's not very possible for me to actually place a finger on the different aspects that have made that possible. Nonetheless, I can attempt to say a few things. One of them, I think, has been what I would like to call staying power. The other one, I would call it consistency. Staying power simply means that, as I look at it, is that there have been a lot of low moments for CIPESA, where payment of salaries was not possible because there was no funding. But there were some individuals at that point who were able to stay around and keep working and work fairly diligently during that process. CIPESA will be doing 4 years in 2024. 24, that's 20 years, yeah, in 2024. That's a long period of time. But also the other thing is the consistency. The consistency in terms of the nature of the work that we do, but also the quality with which we do that work. There is the aspect, of course, of the adapting. CIPESA started purely as a research organization with the aim that there is a shortage of evidence on ICT policy issues. So let's be a policy think tank that produces knowledge, and then those who need it can pick it and use it for their own work. But then we realized along the way that no, that wasn't sufficient. As people who produce this work, we would be better placed if we work a bit more with other entities in order to make them aware of this work, make noise about the work, and push for the recommendations in this work to be adopted. There was the aspect, again, which sort of is part of that cycle of creating capacity for individuals to appreciate the things that we're researching about, the things that we care about. So that adaptability was also there. But again, when you look at the kind of issues CIPESA was addressing in 2005, 2006, a lot of them have changed. It was mainly, it was intellectual property, there was a bit of e-waste, there was infrastructure, but mostly open access infrastructure. And of course, there was internet governance, which has remained fairly the same. But the issues that we address, even within internet governance, have changed. The thematic issues that we address as an organization, digital economy, the digital rights, the ICT for democracy, are issues which we were not working on at that time. So the staying power, the consistency, tenacity, adaptability are all things that I think I would advise somebody to do. I'm going, that's sort of rounding up those issues, but I'm going to say a bit of other things. When you do your work, do it well. Try and do work with the best quality that is possible. We don't have a lot of expertise sometimes. We don't have a lot of resources. We don't in terms of individuals, but also in terms of logistics and finances. And we don't have a lot of time, yet there are pressures to produce. So that always gives a temptation to rush to produce outputs. But what we try to do many times is that we prefer to not beat a deadline, even twice, to producing something which is substandard. Because mediocre quality is going to spoil your name, and individuals are going to speak about that for a bit of time. So quality production, but once you have also produced it, it is extremely essential that you try and get that quality product to the attention of individuals who need to get it, to understand, to know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, that's an area where, as CIPESA, we do extremely badly. Other agencies I also know that produce knowledge also do quite poorly. They produce a report just like we do, and it's only in the first week of its publication that there's anything that is heard of it. And it's just one big publication without perhaps a brief out of it, blogs, Twitter campaigns highlighting small issues, some animations, which our friends in Kingston did the other day, a movie which PIN did for your 2019 State of Digital Rights. That is something we need to do a bit more of, that we are not doing very well. And then the others is partnerships. Partnerships are extremely important in the kind of work that we do. And I believe they would be important for anybody else who is into the kind of civil society think tank work that we do, whether they're in digital rights or not. When you bring heads together, you have louder voices, you have bigger ideas, you're able to accomplish more. So that is something which I would advise others to always go for.
I have to swap platforms, and I hope you can hear me better now.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, this looks much better. All right. I wanted us to move to the opportunity to ask questions. To invite questions from from participants or even co-panelists for Wakabi. I have a few more questions before I come back to my last set of questions. I wanted to know if we have some questions from others. Okay, while I'm waiting for the questions, you did mention a few things that I found interesting at the beginning when you talked about the person that gave you the opportunity to work at CIPESA. I mean, two things. One is that, and the other is that there was also CIPECO. Now, let me start with this question. Does CIPECO still exist?
No, it does not exist. When Katia set up these two, they were actually projects.
Yes.
And the project was for 2 years. So once the project closed, CIPECO did not have funding, so it closed. CIPESA, at that point, got registered as an entity and sought for funding. And it is still here and growing stronger.
Yes. And it will be 20 years soon. And I'm sure we're going to have a party in Kampala. I'll be waiting for my invite for that.
You also mentioned someone who gave you the opportunity to join CIPESA. Let's talk very quickly about mentorship. What is your, and I know you mentioned it in terms of how to learn. You could learn from, what do you call it? You could learn from reading, you could learn from school, you could learn from mentors, and you talked about having distant mentors. How would you advise either, some of our peers who want to have senior mentors or peer mentors, because those exist, or people who are just starting out or who are, still making their way through our sector or through civil society generally and want to have mentors and, not for the sake of the opportunity, but of course for the sake of learning and all that. What are your views in terms of how people can navigate this mentorship space?
It would help for starters to show an interest in the area of work of the person you're targeting to be a mentor, but that interest is not enough. One should also show that they are actually dedicated. So try and do something before you come to me to tell me that you need some advice from me. There should be something fairly solid from you, which shows that you are into this and that I should commit my time to mentoring you. The other one is an alignment of interests. Because if I have a particular interest in a certain area and my views go in direction X, it may not help for you to come and you're coming from the other direction, because it's not time for me to start deciding on which directions to go. There are some things on which I'm pretty set what I believe and what I want to push forward. But there's also the issue of volunteering. Volunteering.
I was going to ask you about volunteering. Good.
One of the ways in which people who want to get mentorship or who want to associate with organizations and get work with them can do is start volunteering with such organizations in different areas. It can be publicizing work done by an organization. It can be writing. It can be reviewing and editing stuff. There are a whole lot of things that people can be able to volunteer on. But in the process of doing that, they would be able to learn more about the organization, pick up a lot of skills, and get themselves well known and endeared to the people who are in the organization. And that gives them a chance either to work with those organizations or to build a skill set that they can use to work elsewhere in this field.
Okay, so I was actually going to ask you that question about volunteering, and I'm glad that you touched on it. So there's been a whole lot of debate about volunteering versus paid work, and it appears to me from some of the things I've been reading that people have claimed that volunteering is what many big organizations use to attract cheap labor. And things like that. I mean, there's a whole conversation about internship, but I think that's now resolved because most internships are paid. Well, many internships are paid. But in terms of volunteering, what is your take? What's your personal experience, by the way? For every time you volunteer, were you paid a stipend?
I think volunteers should not be paid just like that. Just like staff should not be paid like that. Everybody should earn, yeah, from what they do, but there should be no earning when somebody does not deserve to earn. So volunteers should be paid for as long as they are earning it. Namely, they are putting in sufficient effort and time and interest. They are not volunteering for the sake of volunteering or being seen to be volunteering. It's the same philosophy I hold for staff. If staff don't work, they should not be paid.
Well, That's true, and it's quite interesting. Now, I see that I don't have any questions just yet, which in a way makes room for opportunity for me to ask some of the other questions. I'm saying again to participants and co-panelists, please feel free to ask, to be unmuted, to ask a question, or you can type the question in the chat, and we will take them as part of this conversation. And for anyone who is watching on YouTube, you can also ask your questions right there on YouTube. It will be brought to my attention and we'll bring it in here. So, let's talk. We've talked a bit about Wakabi.
I'm saying, I think we're today, these sessions that we're having are really rich, given the panelists that are going to be speaking throughout the day. But I think it would be good if we pick a bit more of your own wisdom. Then there will be a
today is not my day.
So I think
today is not my day.
So I think today I want to turn things a little bit and shoot one myself.
Let's try that.
How do you build an organization that is strong, resilient, sustainable? What are those elements that should take?
Okay, you're twisting my arm here, but because you're Wakabi, because you're my boss, I don't have a choice. I have to answer these questions. But like you said, you're right. One of the first things is that decision to continue going. Many people call it names, they call it grit, they call it drive, they call it various things. But there will be no moment times when you will spend your own personal resources. There will be times when you will not have enough. And I remember that there have been times when not just a Paradigm Initiative, many other organizations have announced programs, hoping to get funding for it and didn't get funding, but still went ahead to hold the programs anyway or to conduct the research. And the reason for that is not because you just have to do it, but because when you build an institution, it has to keep adding value. And that's why, you saw me smiling and nodding when you were talking about staying power, about people. I think at the center of successful institutions or institutions that are resilient and sustainable are people. And you alluded to that. The people who are, some people will say you're day one. People who, in spite of, poor pay, which hopefully gets better because we can't afford to stay on the level of poor pay. The people who, in spite of the lack of resources, of course, that also must change because as an institution, you must grow to get resources. But there are people who are there and are committed to the vision, and to them, it is not 9 to 5. It is not, I resume at 9 and at 4:59, I'm packing my bag. Those are the people at the center of building institutions. There are also partners who see beyond just giving you money, who want to see, they share templates with you. One of the things I'm excited about right now is the opportunity for me to share a template of something that we do at PIN with an organization, that is led by someone who thinks I'm, or who believes that I'm their mentor, right? To share a template, maybe a staff remuneration template or a process template, because then you can customize that template and you don't have to start from the beginning all over again. So you said it already. Those are the things that you talked about in terms of sustainability and building a resilient organization. That's staying power. I say a lot that, PIN will be here for a long time, right? And if we're going to be here for a long time, we have to do things differently. And that is what you were talking about earlier, that we have to do things differently. We may not be perfect. Of course, we're not perfect, as we build institutions, but we have to continuously improve our processes. You release an annual report. Every year, you have to ask yourself the question, are we doing it better than last year? You release a film, you host an event, whatever you do, getting that feedback. And I think one of the critical elements is also the power of feedback. I'm sure you can relate. There are many times that people who are friends have told me, oh, I was in this room and they were discussing pain or they were discussing you and saying, oh my God, you guys did a terrible job with that report or with that program. And I say to them, please tell me more. And they're wondering, why do you want to hear more? Guess what? Because criticism is the breakfast of champions, like someone put it. Someone said it that way. But I think it's very true. The criticisms are things that you can now take and build on. So someone says you're writing a shitty report. Fine. Guys, what was shitty about this report? Let's fix it. And in taking that feedback and improving the report, you get better. And it's fine. You know, people may be saying it for any reason they want, but that feedback is very useful for you. So, like you've said, those are some of the factors that I believe are responsible for building staying power in institutions. And now I come back to you because this session is
before you do, Gbenga, I wanted to just mention two things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
There was a lot that you said. I agree with all of it. But the issue of relevance is actually something, the word was in my mind when you asked the question earlier. I don't know why it didn't come out when I was talking. But relevance is extremely important. Let's mark that. The other one is funding. You cannot work and work without funding. You cannot have staying power forever unless you have funding. So we have to think critically how we are able to continue attracting funding, diversifying the funding sources, and you know, so we are able to do our programs better and paying our staff and partners.
Yes, Wakabi is back.
No, I'm really sorry, Gbenga.
No, it's fine. I had the same experience last night, so we understand. This is Africa. This is why we do what we do.
No, but Biden and Putin had a similar problem the other week, so it's not really only Africa's problem. So I think we shouldn't feel too bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let me maximize the last 4 minutes I have with you. I wanted to ask you very quickly about 2020. In a simple sentence, if you were asked to describe 2020 and digital rights in a sentence, how would you describe 2020? No, actually, let's make it 3 sentences, Wakabi. 3 sentences.
Okay. So 2020 was a hard year for digital rights, and this was made harder partly because of the fight against COVID-19. That gave governments a lot of leeway to issue emergency laws and to give security services emergency powers. Those powers are actually legitimate in international law and in national jurisdictions. The problem is that in many places they were misused. And that misuse resulted in serious breaches to privacy rights, but also seriously undermined other rights to assembly, to association, to access information, and to express expression. There were countries that were holding elections in that context, and for many of them, again, COVID provided an excuse to further stifle many rights, including digital rights. So it was a bad year that came with an overall democratic regression in many African countries, but also deterioration in the state of digital rights.
Great, thank you. And I agree with you. It was a difficult year for digital rights in many ways. Now, let me come to one of the quite exciting parts of this conversation. I want you to select the best and the worst of digital rights in 2020. You can choose the leader or the country. So according to you, who won the award of the worst, the one to be shamed, and who won the award of the best, they want to be named. And I'm going to tally all those votes for the 6 of you all through the day, and then I will announce our what I've tagged our mock African Digital Rights Awards.
Okay, for the last, it's really tough, partly because 2 of them just left town, that being Magufuli and Idris Deby. They would be serious contenders for this, but they are no longer with us. So we leave them out.
Okay.
But we have very many other strong candidates. Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, there's Paul Biya of Cameroon, Eyadema in Togo, I think even Abiy of Ethiopia is there. And then some chap who is not far from where I am, Museveni of Uganda.
I know.
If I were asked to go with one,
yes, please go with one.
I would choose Museveni.
Museveni, okay. And who will be the best in terms of at least he tried or at least she tried?
For various reasons, I probably would go for Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana. The Ghanaians I speak to have quite a few things against him. Yeah, but from a distance, he looks to me like somebody who does a lot of things correctly.
You know, they say at times that the grass is greener on the other side. So maybe that's why some Ghanaians feel that way. But you're not the only one who feels that Ghana has actually had, a bit more. Like they say, it's like a field of terrible things. One thing that is not as terrible then looks like it is a great thing. So we look forward to being able to have better examples, on the continent. And I know that we're supposed to talk to Grace shortly, but I will just want to find out from the team, maybe through Bekele. Please let me know how that is, because I want to give Wakabi his chance for his final words now, and then we'll see where we take it from here. All right, Wakabi, we're at that point where you get to say some of the things you wanted to say, but either you forgot or the network didn't allow us to hear you. But digital rights, Africa, CIPESA, 2020, your career journey, what are those things you want to leave us with, you want us to remember? This chapter is called the last chapter.
So we find ourselves at a very interesting point. Interesting because there are various developments that continue to happen, which worsen the situation that we are working on, the situation of the digital rights, the situation of the governance. To an extent, we might want to ask ourselves whether the work we do is actually worth it or is actually having an impact. On the other hand, the fact that things continue happening is itself a vindication that the kind of work that we are doing needs to be done and done better and done by more actors. So we need to build the movements of people that support the work that we do, that are involved in the work that we are doing. We need to provide research that speaks to the issues and explains them to various individuals and give them the capability to understand issues and use our work in further creating awareness, in doing advocacy, in influencing policy making and practices by governments, and even by non-state actors, because they also represent in many of our countries predators of internet freedom. We obviously need to work smarter, work more in partnerships, find different ways and different constituencies to involve, that is going to give us a better chance of success than we have had so far. And that's me.
Great. Thank you so much, Wakabi. I still have a few questions, but because we had, we asked for 1 hour of your time, I want to be respectful. But seriously, we definitely, need to have more of this kind of conversations where Wakabi doesn't just do the keynote, which is great. I mean, Wakabi will do the keynote, he would speak to the topic and we'll learn, but to also hear from you some of the things you don't typically mention in keynotes, about digital rights. While you were off the call, I was just reminding people, about some of the things that you said that I find very, 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 important for us to note. And I think if you listen to any leader in our sector, many of them will be able to point to the experience that you share, that someone actually invited you to come and work with CIPESA. As far as many people are concerned, and which is the reality, you lead that organization, right now. So it's interesting to hear that there was a time when, like you mentioned earlier, there were times when there were not enough resources. Now, CIPESA is that institution on the continent that is able to give resources to other people to do the kind of things that you do and the things that you used to do. So I really honestly look forward to more opportunities to have this kind of conversations. Thankfully, this is recorded, so people can have access to this. And if there are more questions, I'm sure you wouldn't mind entertaining more questions either via email or other channels. Which is the best channel, by the way, if people have general questions they want to ask you as a follow-up, which is your best channel? Social media, email, WhatsApp, and I'm not going to ask for your personal number on this during this conversation because this is streamed live, don't worry.
Email is good, but I also wanted to say thanks, Gbenga. This has been very interesting. I look forward to you being in my position someday, a little bit longer than you are, but I'm also going to stay in here and very eagerly listen to the other individuals that will be taking over this seat momentarily.
Yes. Can I play Oliver Twist a bit? Because I just heard you say something that I loved to hear. You said you were going to stay a bit. Can I then steal 5 minutes of your time? Because there is that question of your opportunity that I wanted to drill into. Do you mind? Can I please do that?
Go ahead.
Great. So tell us a bit more about this opportunity. And I'm saying this because I know from many people I've talked to, there are people like that who gave them a chance. I'd like to hear more about how exactly this happened. And I'm sure there are things that I and other people can pick from either what you did, how you heard about the opportunity, what happened during the interview. It's kind of strange thinking of Wakabi in an interview asking for a job. But tell us a bit more about that. Let's hear from
you. There was a wise woman, I think. She wasn't Nigerian or Ugandan, but she said, opportunity comes to those who are prepared. When Katia, that lady, got to know about me, they did a call. They wanted 2 individuals, one English speaking, one French speaking, to go and do 2 months in Geneva. So they looked at the competencies of the various people and they chose the one they thought was better prepared. When that individual went and did 2 months in Geneva, he didn't just enjoy the $6,000 plus living allowance. No, he did his work and did it perfectly to the extent that when they returned, there were no interviews or looking for somebody. They just said, this is the man, start tomorrow. The man started in 2006, January 1st. He's still at it, doing it even better. So the bottom line I would say is that it helps all of us if we try to do our work and do it well. If we try and understand topical issues in our domain, however difficult they might be, however new they might be. Not long ago, I was reading a couple of articles that I wrote on privacy and interception and the whole debate we're having today on digital rights, the articles that I wrote in 2006, they looked to me like articles I may not be able to write today, top grade. But that's because I took an interest in understanding stuff and doing stuff very well.
Okay, I understand we have a question in Q&A, but I can't see the question in Q&A. So maybe I can ask my colleague Febekile to quickly maybe share that question or even ask. And thanks a lot, Wakabi, for mentioning. Okay. Beautiful. I'm sure this person wanted to say CIPESA is doing a lot despite the coronavirus. What legacy do they envisage in the near future for Uganda and Africa as a whole? So what legacy do you envisage for Uganda and Africa as a whole, especially seeing that in spite of the coronavirus, you're doing a lot? And I promise you, this is my last question.
As said earlier, the situation of COVID has in many countries led to undermining of digital rights, but also the situation of COVID has made many of us realize the centrality of technology to livelihoods, to rights, to work, to education. That gives us the feeling that advocating for digital rights, advocating for digital access is going to be a bit easier because more people can associate with it, having realized now how central technology is in our lives, in our livelihoods. Mm. So I think to be easier to push harder, to engage more actors that have previously not been involved in digital rights work, and to get them to join our efforts in this regard.
Thank you very much, Wakabi. And this, like I said earlier, has been a pleasure. And we definitely look forward to, I know you are saying you want to reverse the role, and I look forward to that. I'll be glad. But when you don't forget, when you ask me questions, I am going to turn the table and ask you questions like you did for me.